Alright, welcome to the character sculpting stream. I'm like normal going to just give people a little bit of time to just show up, but this should be a really fun one. Just as a reminder, we have a very nice summer sale ongoing right now with tons of really cool products. So we are going to be sculpting a character today. We're going to be sculpting a really nasty looking guy. This is going to be a really fun one where the way I find these guys, I keep going on Pinterest and I just search for like convicts or like old mugshots. So we are going to sculpt this guy here from basically from scratch from a very low base mesh. This is going to be a really fun one. The result may look interesting. Who knows where this will go because I only have this single ref right here. So there we go. So I'm just going to give people a little bit of time to join this one. If you're watching the recording of this one, or if you want to just see the other streams we've done, we have now, this is the fourth stream I think we've done, the fifth stream actually we've done this week, so we've done a lot. So Morten has done 2 streams on environments in Blender, and I've done 2 previous streams. This is my third one. One is on the anatomy of the bones of a person. They're both on anatomy, and then the next one is on the muscles. So there's tons of really good stuff there, which I'm very excited about. So we also have an upcoming course called Intro to Anatomy as well, which is not out yet. So that's just something we have to work with. So let's get started with this guy. So I'm going to be sculpting this entirely without symmetry. This guy here is one you can find under projects, and then it's under head planes, and you can just get started with this one here. Just very nice and simple. I just need to close the door real quick so we don't have too much noise. And that's a little bit better. Oh, and I realized I need to move the reference, not so it's not just behind my head. So let's get started with the sculpting here. It's funny, like sometimes I'm not even looking at the screen. So like at the actual stream, I'm just looking at my actual screen. So hopefully there we go, it's a little bit better. So this is going to be sculpted entirely without symmetry, which is really fun. It usually produces really wacky characters. So the way I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to be starting off with, actually I'm going to be doing this as well with the clay brushes, BCT, just for extra challenge. Asymmetry, clay brushes, really fun stuff. And I'm going to be using this, going under stroke and send the roll distance to something higher. So this just gives me a bit more resolution. I also have around 250,000 polygons right now. So I'm going to be starting off just by blocking in the cheekbones. You can of course go through just getting in the main anatomy or getting in the main proportions for what you want, but I just prefer to just block in the cheekbones and just getting started with the bones. I always go into the bones really quickly. I think it's so important to get into the bones. I also have a little anatomy guy over here as well. That's really useful. This is from the Flip Normal's anatomy bust. So I'm just going to make him a little bit bigger. This would be under cam view, and you can just make him quite nice and large, because then I have a little reference here. This is just the default one up here, the cam view. I just changed this to be the anatomy model. So we are just going to work on top of this. We are going to be just carving in his cheeks, or his jawline, just working a little bit all over the place. This is going to not be particularly academic. There are some tutorials like I just recorded for the Intro to Anatomy, or there's like a Sculpting of Frankenstein character, which is very analytical, which is like, okay, first we block in this and then we block in this. What I'm doing now is kind of just playing around with things. I'm still thinking about the anatomy, but I'm less analytical about it. So it's meaning that I'm less step by step. This is more how I sculpt when I'm doing my own things, where you kind of shorthand a lot of stuff, where you don't have to sculpt all the bones to perfection. You can just kind of add a little hint of it here and there, and that usually works quite well. Also, if you guys have any questions throughout as well, you are more than welcome to ask that. I'm going to be focusing more on the sculpting than the question this time though, but if you do have any interesting questions, I'm probably going to be taking those throughout as well. So just trying to get in a little bit of this guy as well as we're working with this. Asymmetry is awesome when you're just doodling around. It's terrible for any kind of production, because then topology is asymmetrical and just brings in all sorts of nasty issues. But yeah, we have a lot of very good sculpting courses on Flip Models as well. So if you're interested in learning how to sculpt, I highly recommend those. We try to put down, both Morten and myself, we try to put down everything we know about sculpting in a lot of our different courses. We're really not holding back on any kind of big secrets. If we come up with new courses, that's more because they didn't fit in the other ones, or because we learned more stuff since then. So this is going to look quite rough for some time. This may look rough for the whole duration, but hopefully this is going to be quite an interesting and fun character to do. I love just doing, like, getting the old mug shots like this. There's so much variety in these guys. But even though it looks rough what I'm doing, I'm still thinking about the anatomy. I'm not just adding brush strokes for brush strokes' sake and such. I'm still very much thinking about what should this character look like. I don't usually use the clay build-up brush, or the clay tubes brush, or the regular clay brush. I usually stick to the clay build-up. The clay build-up is fantastic. The reason I'm using this one is because it's just out of control, just because it's an incredibly wacky brush. So this gives me, having less control is sometimes really good, because it allows you to just have unexpected things in it. While the clay builder brush, I control that fully. Like, it's one of those, like, you can't really master sculpting, but you can master specific tools. Like, for instance, if you're sculpting in, or if you're modeling in Maya, you can master the bevel tool, right? Like, there is just no additional complexity that could be ever existed there. And it's a little bit the same thing with the different brushes as well, like in terms of the clay buildup, or sorry, the clay buildup. I like mastered that brush in a way that I can control it fully. I can do exactly what I want the brush to do. Well, this one here, bit chaotic. So I'm just trying to block in the main anatomy at this point. Like, I'm not really thinking about the character design per se. I like to think about it as there being two stages to sculpting characters. One is the anatomy stage, and the other one is the design stage. And no matter how you're sculpting it, you still need to work with both of them. Because if you just were to think about design, I would try to make him look like this, but it wouldn't feel anatomical. But if I only feel like, it wouldn't feel like it belongs in the world. But if I were to only focus on the anatomy, it would feel very anatomical, but it would also be really boring. Is there any difference between clay buildup in ZBrush versus Blender? Yeah, it's just better in ZBrush. The clay brushes are just more refined in ZBrush. Like, Blender has improved a lot in sculpting the last few years, but I mean, you can't really take over the leap that ZBrush has on sculpting. It's just so far ahead. A lot of the advantages with sculpting in Blender aren't really down to the sculpting in Blender. It's more just to do with Blender as a software. Like, for instance, in ZBrush, if you need image planes, they would have to make some kind of weird little hack almost how to do image planes. But in Blender, you already have image planes. This is just a tool you have. If you want multiple cameras in Blender, well, it's just like the tool you have. If you want to render something, well, it's just a tool you have. So a lot of the advantages there is just that Blender is significantly more feature rich in general, but ZBrush is much more specific when it comes to sculpting. Here's a good question. Why am I working so high poly? Yeah, the advantage of working in high poly is that I get in all the brush strokes I want. I get in all the details from the brush strokes. It really depends on your preference. Some people prefer to work high poly right away. The brushes, the clay brushes, they work best with high poly. Like, they don't work particularly well with low poly compared to high poly, at least. But it really depends. Some people like to just work with really low subdivision levels, get in the shapes, smooth things out, new subdivision level, keep refining things. And some people like myself, I just prefer to go a bit more nuts. I find that the results are usually a little bit more interesting. I'm working without symmetry just because I think it's more fun. There isn't really a lot of reason for this. Like, I don't need to make a portfolio piece with this, and I just want to have fun with this one. I don't want to show you guys an approach to just doodling around with this. So by working without symmetry, the character becomes more asymmetrical, right? Like by definition. So it means that the character is just going to look more interesting, particularly making somebody like this. If I'm making somebody who looks like super gnarly like this, then I prefer to do this kind of stuff without symmetry. So just trying to make the design a little bit more interesting now. We can like play around with this, like make him a bit more like tapered. But yeah, you don't want to work with symmetry or without. You want to work with symmetry if you're doing something real, something that's going to be picked up by other people. If you're just having fun and playing around with this, you know, fine, whatever. Just do what you want to do. I'm also not really sure exactly where I'm taking this guy. I could be taking him to like just more towards him, or this could be as a starting point, because right now the creative juices haven't really started flowing. Often that's what I do, where I start off with just a general direction, and then from there I'm going in and just playing around with it even more. So just using a reference to get started is also a great idea. You can see that there's already character in him. It's a good character or not, that's a different story, but it's still pretty cool. I also have a brush here as well. This is a really useful one. It's from like, what is it called, like ZBrush Workshop or something? I can't remember the exact name of it. It's a site that sells really good ZBrush brushes, and this is fantastic for just like getting like a soft clay feel into it. So I'm just going to be carving in the mouth like so, getting in all the shapes. What I think is really important as well, I keep mentioning this in our tutorials, that whenever like myself or somebody who's been sculpting for many years are sculpting, and if you're a beginner, don't try to match the speed of the instructor. The reason is just that if you've been doing this for a long time, you can really shorthand a lot of things. So I'm skipping a lot of steps just because I kind of do them in my head. So you don't have to block in all the bony landmarks and all this kind of stuff, and this is messy as all hell right now, but it's not really messy in my head. This is more like the more you learn about 3D, the more you learn about sculpting, the more complexity you have in your head, and the less complexity you have in the actual, like, yeah, the more complexity, the more stuff you can have here, because it's all managed in my head. It's the same with drawing as well. You see people who are new to drawing, they have to construct absolutely everything, draw perspective grids and all that kind of stuff, and somebody who's like really experienced at it, they're just gonna like draw down a few lines and they get all the volume and such, and it's just great. So it really just depends on where you're currently at. Essentially, you want to sculpt slow. You want to think about the different brush strokes. Like in my mind, I'm sculpting slow. I've just been doing this for such a long time that all the patterns have basically been automated, and that's just something that's really important to keep in mind, that the more you do this, the more you automate things. It's the same when you're starting to read something when you're a kid, right? Or if you're learning a new language, then you're going to be reading at an incredibly slow pace. You have to enunciate every single word. But then once you've been doing it for a while, it just becomes automatic. And that's the same thing I'm doing now as well. So I'm working slow in my mind. It's just that a lot of this has just been entirely automated. So sculpt slow and think about what you're sculpting. And if you can sculpt something in a slow manner, then you can sculpt stuff in a fast manner. But if you, like, just by moving your hand faster and practicing that, but if you can sculpt something crappy fast, nobody cares. Now you just got to a crappy result faster. Just playing around with his ears as well. Still not really sure where I'm taking him. I really like this brush because it has like a good mix between texture and like softness. And yeah, just remember that we have a very interesting, very good summer sale right now as well. Tons of really, really good sculpting content there as well. For all of our stuff, all of the Flip Normals content is currently 40% off. It's really fun to sculpt without symmetry. You just get weird results this way. So you can see I'm not really lining anything up. It's not really about that. I don't really care about lining anything up. It's more just about feeling the character. Yeah, it's what Dill is saying here. An organized mess, like my bedroom. Like, you know where stuff is, but if somebody else were to see it, you'd be like, my God, you need to talk to somebody. But you're like, yeah, it's fine. I know where stuff is. It's actually a strangely good metaphor. Here I'm just smoothing things out. Whenever I'm smoothing, then I'm destroying things. So the smooth brush is fantastic if you know how to use it. And I used to be a lot more like anti-smooth, but I'm not even becoming more pro-smooth. It's just a brush, right? You don't have to be pro or pro for or against it. It's just a brush. But the advantage of the smooth brush is that it destroys things. The disadvantage of the smooth brush is that it destroys it. Do you prefer to do stylized characters or more photo real? Love to do both. I don't really like fully stylized like full on Pixar or Disney, but I really like these kind of weird abstract sculptures almost. I think this is really fun to do. But realistic is also really fun as well. It's just a very different challenge. One is really not better than the other for me. I find this to be a bit more fun to do, just because this is where I can really play around with shapes, and you can just have a lot more fun with that. I find that it might sound a little bit weird, but once you've been doing 3D for a while or art for a while, you can kind of like do like quote unquote anything, where if you give enough time, enough reference and all that, like there's nothing I can't really do in terms of sculpting. And that means that it's basically like the challenge is a little bit gone, because in the beginning when you're starting 3D, the challenge is in a large way, can I even do it? But then once you become professional, you kind of need to be able to do anything, right? Because otherwise you don't have a job. Otherwise you're just going to be, nobody's going to pay you for it, because they need to be able to create something highly specific. And the thrill is a little bit gone that I find. It's still challenging, of course, but you can always pull it off somehow, because there is some process to it. But then if you do this kind of stuff, it's more about just playing around and having fun with it. It's not really about reaching a final result. It really is about the process about it. Like if this, I'm having a lot of fun with this now, but if this turns out to be terrible, whatever, who cares, right? It's like nobody's paying me for this. It's not going to be shown anywhere. Like then, if it turns out great, fine. Maybe it turns into a YouTube tutorial or something, or just an Instagram post or something. But if it doesn't turn out well, there's not really a lot of consequence to it. If it turns out well, there's also not a whole lot of reward to it, right? This is different if you're building a portfolio, then you have to be more aware of that. But still, you have to think about the anatomy. You have to think about the construction of different things, because otherwise it's going to look really weird. This is one of the things that a lot of people get wrong if you're looking at people doing these almost like abstract sculpts. And it's not really abstract, right? But these kind of more wacky sculpts that it looks like you're just kind of doodling around, keeping it super loose, and then suddenly you blink for a second, and then suddenly the character is there. I'm still thinking about the anatomy. I'm very conscious of the anatomy. I'm just keeping it a bit more loose. It's like the whole accuracy versus precision thing. I'm being kind of accurate, but I'm not being very precise, meaning that everything is a bit all over the place, but it's still like fundamentally accurate to a human design. You can also just play around with this as well. Like if you want to make something more interesting in terms of stylized things, you can. If you were to look at like the silhouette here, for instance, let's say we have a few curves, right? We have this curve right here, and we have this curve here. What you can do if you want to push this more, you can make this more accentuated, and you can make this deeper, and you can make this go further out. You can make this go more in. If you have the mouth, for instance, and the mouth goes like so, you can make it go like so, pushing this kind of stuff in. So that's a really good way to get more character in your sculpts. Just pushing and pulling things all over the place. Really just going nuts with this kind of stuff. If something goes inwards, push it more inwards. If something goes outwards, push it more outwards. If something is big, make it bigger. If something is small, make it smaller. If something is even, make it more even. If something is uneven, make it more uneven. Basically, you're just adding contrast to things. That's one of the most important things I've learned in art, that so much about art is all just about controlling the contrast. And you can control the contrast in a myriad of ways. Contrast is not just a slider, right, from bright to dark, though that is one of them. For instance, if you're dealing with like an image, then, or just here, right, in sculpting as well, you do actually have a contrast slider under deformation. Maybe you didn't know this one. A little pro tip for you here, all the way in the bottom, I think it is. Here we should have a contrast one. You can just see, right, that this just pushes everything in and out. So this is actually quite cool. I'm just gonna dock this over somewhere and then just go under contrast. Hopefully you can see this behind my head. So let's just go under contrast. I just had it here. There we go. You just increase this a little bit. So contrast can be something that's going to make what's big bigger, and then what's small smaller. But it can also be in terms of smoothness. You can have areas that are entirely smooth and they become like you can control that. Some areas are smooth, some areas are detailed. So there's so many ways to play with contrast. Some areas are large, some areas are small. Now there's a contrast between that. You can have some areas that are warm in terms of color, some areas are cool in terms of color. Plenty of ways to play with contrast. What do you think about the VFX work scene right now? An issue with the VFX scene right now is specifically right now. This is not like a macro global trend or something. This is more, there is a writer's strike in Hollywood, which means that most American shows are being put on hold right now, unless they've currently been written. So there is a bit of a shortage of or rather there's a shortage of projects right now. So if your project was already written and in production, you're fine. But if it's kind of like, if it's pre-production right now, a lot of projects stop just like very, very suddenly. So a lot of companies are not renewing contracts because of that. And yeah, it's a little bit, it's definitely like an industry problem because of that. Generally though, after COVID, there was a huge surge of jobs because a lot of the jobs that were going to be done during COVID, they were postponed and then it came back again. But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one right now as well. It's also like because of the mortgage or the interest rates around the world are getting more expensive. So it's harder to finance a project using debt because the interest rate has gone up like dramatically in the last few months. So there are definitely a few like macroeconomic trends that are contributing to that, but also do some local events like a writer's strike and such. How old is too old to start a career in 3D? I would say whenever you physically can't sculpt or do anything anymore. So I would probably say like maybe 85 years old. Anything less than that, you should be fine. I mean, honestly, like you're never too old like to start a career in 3D. Like people are shifting careers and people are starting careers late. There is no age limit to it in VFX. Like there are people from all ages, people who are like brand out of university, 20 years old, and people who are also like 50s and 60s, right? There's a huge spectrum. If you're, let's say you were like in your 40s and you want to switch to VFX, nobody would be judging you for it. One of the advantages you would have is that you just have more life experience compared to a lot of other people. Obviously, I don't know your age, but I've seen this sometimes as well, where like 24-year-olds are like, am I too old to start in VFX? Like, of course you're not. Of course you're not. Yeah, if you're 40 years old, you're not too old to start VFX, like not at all. If that's what you want to do, go for it. What I find with older students as well, like I've been mentoring a few people who was a bit older. Like when I do my mentorship, I have students who are like, in 20s and such. A lot of them are in 20s, but some of them are also in their 40s as well. And what I see with that is that, and also when I've been teaching as well, whenever I see somebody who's a bit more of a mature student, is that they usually take their work a lot more seriously. They're not just in school to like party and all that. They're there to get work done. For them, it's serious. They know what they're taking up in terms of a loan. They understand that, and they understand that they really have like one shot at this, and they just work their ass off. So I find that there often be an advantage of. There's often an advantage of being older. So just zooming out and just evaluating what I think about the character. I think he's looking quite cool now. Like he's there's a lot of character in this guy already, and a lot of cool brushstrokes. There's also a lot of original stuff back here from the original one, which I'm probably just going to be leaving this. It looks almost like I just used like a block of clay and just play around with that, which is, you know, basically what I was doing as well. So it's important to get some distance from this as well. And we're still only at like 250,000. I haven't dynameshed this once. Yeah, here's a great question from Adrian Alonso. I've been sculpting for, I'm just going to not read it, I'm just going to be sculpting at the same time. I've been sculpting for some time, and I want to do stylized characters. Should I take some time to do realistic stuff and then switch? Basically, I find it depends how stylized you want to go, because stylized isn't like a thing, right? Realism is a thing, because realism is trying to emulate reality, but stylized it's like depending on the art direction. I always find anatomy to be an exceptionally useful tool. You shouldn't necessarily understand every single origin and insertion, but it's going to help you. It's going to help you to understand what volumes there are. I find that stylized art is in large way just realistic art where you simplified it down. Like you simplified the bones down to like simpler shapes. You merge muscles when it comes to it, but you understand what's going on. So I always find it to be really useful to spend a bit more time on doing realistic anatomy, because if you know how to do it in the real world, then it's a lot easier to stylize it as well, though you need to of course understand the art direction part as well. So if you're doing fully realistic art, then you of course need to spend a lot more time on like the detailing in the pores and all that kind of stuff. But if you're doing stylized art, you need to understand it to a degree, just so you know what tools you have to play with and how to do it. But then you just need to do stylized characters. Giving some Frankenstein vibes with this one. Yeah, I've kind of been thinking about this subconsciously. It might be his enormous forehead. We can maybe just reduce this a little bit as well. But yeah, I was actually considering maybe if I should just turn this whole guy into a Frankenstein as well. Just because, you know, I made a Frankenstein tutorial last year, had a lot of fun with that one. Whenever I'm doing these kind of changes here, like the bigger global changes, I think it's really fun to play around with or use symmetry for this, just because it's just faster. But for all the sculpting here, like this is really the first time in the whole stream I've been using symmetry. Just seeing how long we've been streaming for right now. We are 27 minutes. I'm going to keep going with this one for as long as I think it's fun. Also, just a little quick note as well. This is just a YouTube note. If you guys aren't subscribed to our channel, I know a lot of people are just kind of checking out the channel without subscribing. You just it would be really nice if you could just subscribe. It helps us just quite a lot in general. But you know, no pressure if you don't want to. You can just enjoy my little stream. I'm going to be dynameshing this now, see what happens. Yeah, so now it just becomes a little bit more even, but I'm going to be dynameshing this and making the resolution like double or so. Yeah, that's cool. So keeping this at around 700,000. This just allows me to have be a bit more specific with this. The more you know about human anatomy, the easier this kind of stuff becomes, because all people are fundamentally the same at the core in terms of like cheekbones and such. Like, you know, at least when I say all people, let's just preface this with saying that we have, you know, the bell curve. All people are within this. This is where you have, I say all people have 2 arms, and then there are some people who have 1, right? So within the bell curve, everyone is the same. And then there's a lot of variation between people. But in terms of just the main shapes, people are very, very, very similar, with an absolutely wild amount of individual variation. How do you decide when you need to increase the resolution? When I can't get in the shapes I want, then I tend to increase the resolution. In this case, I couldn't get the shapes I wanted, so I needed more resolution. You can also see I'm going a bit more back to the standard smooth brush, damp standard right now, to clay buildup, just because I want some more specific shapes around the eyes as well. Just going in and refining the anatomy a little bit here. Do you guys at Flipnomals ever do presentations, seminar type of events? We don't really do that. I was in Bournemouth about a month, 2 months ago or something, and I had a talk there. Well, I was teaching sculpting for about a day, but that's honestly quite rare. We don't really do that. We were so focused on building our company now, like building Flipnomals, that we don't really have time for that. And also, obviously, COVID restrictions as well have been a massive hit to that. Flipnomals Con would have been fun though, but probably not happening for if ever. Probably not happen for some time if it ever happens. That sounds like it's a lot of work to do a Flipnomals Con. We had a Discord meetup actually in 2019 in London. Went to a Hawaiian burger place, and yeah, met a lot of real nice people there. Can you move the reference window? Why? I'll try to make it more like this. See if it fits a bit better. So just getting a bit more specific. What I find with sculpting is that you get used to stuff so fast, to the point that it's almost shocking how fast you get used to something. Meaning that you get used to mistakes. Something looks a certain way, and your brain just goes, "Yep, this is how it's always been and how it will always be." And then you need to zoom out, look at this from a few different angles, switch around things and such, and just like refresh your brain a little bit. It's like if you're going to buy perfume or something, and then you were to like smell coffee beans between the different perfumes, then you kind of like reset your scent a little bit. Right, yeah, the tool I'm using now, this brush you can't have because this is in a this is one I bought myself. How you switch to this one? This is actually pretty simple. This is just the Flipnomals anatomy bust. I can actually find a link to that in a sec. But this is just an anatomy bust I have, and then you go under preferences, then you do cam view, and then you just hit make cam view, and then it just puts it up here. But yeah, let me just find the bust real quick. Let's see, we have him right here. So this here is the we have a massive summer sale at the moment, so make sure to check that out if you're interested in tons of cool products. So we have like ready-made eyes. We have Blender Armored Assassin or Female Armored Assassin in Blender by Speechar. Beyond insane, really good reviews. And here we have, let's see if I were to go by latest. Should be here any minute now. We can just look at this in the meantime. We have a lot of traffic now, so the site is a little bit slower. So let's see here. Here's the Frankenstein I was talking about before. We also have tons of really cool stuff. So I'm just going to be sending this in the chat. This is like the Flipnomals exclusive stuff. So you can just find all that. This is the first link. Then we have the second one. This is what I was talking about before. This is the how to sculpt this guy from scratch. This is where we're being very analytical, starting from a sphere and just creating the whole guy from scratch. This is not like a chaos sculpt like what I'm doing now. Then we have this one. This is the second link. And then we have the anatomy bust, which is the third link. You can just check this out in the chat, or just Google Flipnomals anatomy bust. This is a bust I made last year. I actually made this for the mentorship, where I just needed more reference for people, and I found all the reference we had. Like most of the reference online was kind of bad because it was either too abstract, where I couldn't really use it for anything because it was just random, like abstract planes, and or it was too anatomical, like too muscular, which you don't really see here. What do you recommend after taking the Intro to Anatomy course? That's a really good question. It depends on what you have an appetite for. I I recommend Intro 2, or like Realistic Character Portrait Masterclass. One hell of a mouthful. This one here, this is the 4th link, I reckon. This one here is fantastic because this is where you learn how to do the whole thing from scratch, like just basically like literally from like a cube in Blender and such. We just start from that, block out the whole thing, do all of this. The difference between this and Intro to Sculpting is that this is applied. We're not just going through concepts, right? We're actually going through every single stage, showing you the look dev, showing you the textures, the final Blender render, and everything like that. So I highly recommend that one. We also have this one as well. Just gonna send this one. You can check this out yourself. But essentially, this is may learn how to make this whole thing. This is a course Morten made last year. So this is how to do this whole thing entirely in ZBrush. Back to the character. I'm gonna put this guy back like so, and there we go. And hopefully this does not cover my head, and it doesn't. So it's good. It's a little funny when I put it like behind here as well. It looks like there is like a guy just like staring at me in a really angry way. So it's a bit weird. I'm not used to having my head there that much. So just trying to move him so he doesn't really cover my head. Cool. So let's continue the sculpting. The good thing about having these little breaks is that I see new things now. So let's go through, and this is what I was talking about, right? Like you get blind so easily. So just going in here and just making sure we have the these shapes in here, and then just going in and just refining this. This is a line you often see, by the way. It's often a line from like here, and then it continues down here where you have the cheekbones. So this is something that's quite repeatable, like so. Then we have the eye bag here, and the eye bag goes basically right where we have the cheekbone here. So there's not a lot of overlap between these two. What's your preferred way to make hair for a portfolio piece? Honestly, it depends on if you're going for realism or not. If you're going for realism, I would probably do this in XGen. I know a lot of people are switching to Houdini now as well for doing hair, which seems like a great tool. For me, those are really the two options. You have like tools like Yeti as well, but that's a pretty expensive one. I don't think you can buy Yeti in the US as well. So it gets a bit expensive. You need to have a separate hair plugin. You could try it in Blender. I find the hair tools there to be still quite lacking. But it obviously depends what you want to do as well. If you want to do for games, you should probably learn how to do hair cards. But of course, it depends on what you want to do. XGen is a very, very frustrating tool to use, but it's also a very good tool in terms of like you have a lot of control. If you know how to wrestle XGen, you have a lot of control there. So we actually have an intro to XGen as well, made by Michael Cauchy, who's I guess he used to be a groomer. I don't think he's a groomer anymore, but he was a groomer at NPC. He's doing absolutely brilliant grooms for the VFX industry. Just going to flatten off the barrel of the mouth as well a little bit. XGen is buggy, is a common saying, and XGen is very buggy. XGen is probably the most frustrating part of any software I've ever used. It's insane. There are some weird UX things in it, so you're never really sure if the issue is because of the UX or because of, or like just because you don't understand how to do something, or if it's because of the software just being buggy. Very, very frustrating to use. But you can see now the characters coming more to life, right? It's really cool to see where I'm just using this in, I'm just sculpting this entirely without symmetry. I've used symmetry like twice now, and that was just to move things around. I guess hair is always frustrating. Oh yes. Hair for me is one of these like underdeveloped parts of 3D. And I keep ranting about this. One of the, like a lot of different parts of 3D has kind of been formalized in a proper way where you're emulating the real world. If you're sculpting in ZBrush, you're basically becoming a sculptor, right? If you're doing clothing in Marvelous, you're basically becoming a digital tailor. There's so many things like that. If you're doing texturing has got really good with the addition of Painter and such with Mari. But hair is still way back where even with new hair tools, you're still drawing out curves, and you're just doing it in a very old school way, and it's really hard to make it look good. You just have to go in and fiddle with it a lot. So I'm still waiting for some kind of revolutionary new tool to come out, like basically Marvelous Designer for hair, where what you would do, you would just kind of scatter some hair particles over it, then you would groom this using physics, GPU accelerated, and such. This does not exist. This may never exist. Still waiting for it though. Okay, time to do a little bit more anatomy with this. Just refining some of these shapes. Is there anything you would like to see improved in the modeling workflow, or are you content? Yeah, what I would love to see is, I would love to see retopo tools getting much better. Like we're still doing a fair bit, or like you still can't really trust the automatic tools like Zero Measure and such. And UVs is always a bit, it's always a little bit annoying to deal with. So it would be very interesting to see that one. It's very interesting to see what's going to happen with AI in that area, because this is one of the obvious one where, like, it might be hard to do, but it's still one of the obvious one where it's highly repeatable, and you're just doing the same thing over and over again, really. Like retopo isn't particularly hard to do. It's just very time consuming. But I mean, modeling is a refined part of 3D. Like every single software can do modeling to quite a high level. There is a lot of standards here that are solid. Like you can export out an OBJ from any software. You can use it in any other software. So it's modeling is like, I wouldn't say it's solved because then the moment there is something new coming out, then we're in trouble. One thing that is frustrating about modeling to me is ZBrush, to be honest. Like ZBrush is a very difficult software to use. I know how to use software, I've been using it for like since 2006. Still very difficult. The reason I know how difficult ZBrush is whenever there is something new added to it, I can't really just doodle around and figure it out. I have to read documentation for it. While if there is something new in Blender or Maya, I can usually just kind of dig into the, like, try to use it and I'll kind of be all right figuring that out. But with ZBrush, I have to usually read the documentation just because it's in such a weird way. For instance, let me show you. You have a mask, you want to clear the mask. Boom, control drag outside a model. What if you want Dynamesh? Control drag outside a model. Same exact command. This is the kind of stuff you just have to memorize. So I know you have Nomad Sculpt. It's really interesting. There's a lot of cool stuff happening in the sculpting scene right now, but it doesn't really have a desktop version. So there's a lot of cool stuff happening on the iPad front for sculpting, but in terms of like desktop sculpting, which is what I'm doing, then, or like, you know, the professional workflow, nobody's gonna just offload their work and work on an iPad. That would actually be impossible from a practical point of view in terms of a production. Like, yeah, I'm very interested to see what's going to happen in terms of that. Is using a full base mesh for characters considered cheating? Well, studios do this all the time. Like if you see not just are they doing it all the time, they're actively working on improving their base meshes, and all the base meshes, they have multiple texture sets, they have a standard set of blend shapes, like face shapes with them. They have tons of texture maps associated with them. So that means whenever you're starting a new character, you can just use like whatever the default man is, and then you can just kind of go with that. So I think it's useful to the way I like to think about it, if you're optimizing for making the result as nice as possible, it's very useful to use a base mesh. Obviously, the base mesh should, like in terms of a portfolio, should not just be one-to-one. Like if you're just making a generic man and the base mesh is a generic man, then you're not really showing any skill. Then people generally don't know what you can do or not. But if you're creating, like, let's say something more creative, or like a cave troll, or you're creating like Thor from like Ragnarok or something, and it looks exactly like him at the end, and you use the base mesh, awesome. So using a base mesh isn't cheating, it's just optimizing the workflow. I like the workflow. But if you're learning, I highly recommend you don't use a base mesh. Like here, for instance, I'm not using anything, right? I'm using the most generic one in the world, which has some basic proportions on it, and then I'm just dynameshing it. So I think it's a good idea in a portfolio to use a base mesh, but you need to show that you know how to retopologize as well, like retopologize and UV map and all that kind of stuff. Because this is a skill this is something Morten and I've been ranting about a lot, actually, the whole like ZBrush cowboy, that you had a lot of people who still have people who are solid at ZBrush. They know every single button, every single thing about ZBrush, but you can't use them in a production, because a lot of times in a production, you're not really sculpting, right? You're taking a scan and you're like assetizing it, like meaning that you're basically turning it into an asset that can be used, which means that you take them into ZBrush, you take a scan, you might use like C-Wrap or just like Wrap 3D. I think they renamed that now, and you're just turning it into an asset that can actually be used. So it's important that you know how to do that as well, because if you're an expert sculptor but you're a crappy production artist, that's a red flag. You want to be sure that you know how to do both things. Fundamentally, you want to be able to show that you can know how to sculpt. That's really important, that you know how to do that. Retopology is something that's a lot easier to do. I can teach somebody how to retopologize within, like, I've done that, right? We have tons of tutorials on that. You can teach people how to do that within like almost a few hours if they understand 3D. But sculpting, that's like a few years, right? I hope that answered the question on is it cheating to use a base mesh? What I'm doing now is I'm just going over the reference. I'm just adding a few like lines here. This is almost like drawing over it, where I'm just adding variety to it, because it's really hard to add like genuinely interesting things through just by using the clay brushes. So it's not generally hard. It's easier to do it this way. It's easier to go through and just to draw things on top, where I'm not really being particularly careful about things. I'm just kind of doodling around. All right, let's have a quick comparison to this guy here. Let's see, what can we do better? Can maybe round his face a little bit. Henning, what is your opinion on development of Blender compared to legacy 3D software like Maya? Well, I'm almost a little bit offended about the term legacy software, because I don't think it's legacy software. Like, Blender is from the 90s, right? Like, Blender has been called Blender since before Maya was called Maya. They're just all old software. If you look at all the different software you have, like Houdini or Maya or Max or something, they were just old software. One of the most recent ones would actually be Modo, which would be from like at least this millennia. The other ones are all from the last millennia. So yeah, I mean, the development process of Blender is really fast. Like, it's just no doubt about that. What a lot of the other tools are using, like Maya, for instance, they're focusing on almost more enterprise features. Like, they're really serious about adding USD. They're adding highly requested rigging features. Like, they just added like some, I can't remember what it was. It was a really, really interesting rigging feature some years ago in Maya. They were adding like Bifrost, really like solid, interesting particle tools for it. So they're not adding like a lot of the stuff in Blender is like fancy stuff. It looks really cool, but it's not like enterprise stuff, right? So it depends. They're being built a bit for different markets. Like what studios would need today would not be just like a slightly improved bridge tool in Maya, right? The bridge tool is kind of crap, but it's fine, whatever. You have ways around that. What they require would be like Arnold improving, because Arnold is great, but you can always keep improving it. Like more nodes for Arnold, it would be better USD support. A lot of like boring things you wouldn't need day to day. So it's just, they're in large way different software. But one thing I really wish was that about legacy software, about Max and Maya, would be that they would have a sensible pricing, because I think it's insane today, like that they're like how expensive they are. It's like the pricing model is the same for AutoCAD as it is for Max, but there is no like free open source alternative to AutoCAD, because nobody's just casually CADing around in their free time. Nobody's just casually dimensioning a bridge in rural Utah, right? When it comes to CAD software, when people are playing with 3D software, so it's a very different thing. So I really wish that they would have sensible pricing. I know they have the indie versions, but there are restrictions on that, but also like they're not available everywhere and such. So it's I wish they would really be more sensible with that. Personally, I wish they would make Maya and Max free for personal use. And but what about the companies then? Companies can just get it for free. Yeah, sure they could, but they can also get it for free today, right? Like, they can pirate it, right? Like that's possible for them. If they want to have Maya for free today, they can do that. But it's about licensing and compliance. Like if like EA was caught using like cracked versions of Max or something, they would be in a lot of trouble. So companies are complying with regulation and licensing. That's really important for companies to do. So they would not just be using a free version of that. And if they were, then companies would come after them, or like Autodesk would come after them and such. Just going to take a quick little break. Let's just have a little look at this one here. I'm just going to have some water. You guys can just comment in questions as we're going with this. Yeah, here's an interesting question from Richard. For detailing, how do you separate high resolution and low resolution parts in ZBrush? For example, the face is more detailed than the body. You give them a scarf and you hide that they're two different models. Like that's something you can do. Like the trick is basically equivalent to this trick here, right? Where you're pulling things apart. You're hiding the center line. Like this trick here is legit used a lot in VFX. So you can do that if that's like, for instance, if they have clothing, then you like if this is the line of this one, right? And you have clothing, you could separate this with like an actual scarf or just clothing. If that's not possible, then this becomes a bit painful. There are techniques for splitting up the model. Like for instance, you can straight up just like take this part here, mask it off, right? And then just group split it. This is what we did for like Pacific Rim, where we had to split off the heads of the models because it was too high poly. Generally, if you need to do that, you should be doing it in texturing, and then you should be detailing and texturing. Like for instance, if you're doing this for production, you definitely don't want to be doing all the pores in ZBrush. That's complete madness. You want to be doing that in something like Painter or in Mari, because then you don't need to split them into two. But yeah, what I've been doing before is like I've been very careful with my UDIM layout, and then I've been splitting the character up based on the UDIM layout. You can also have like a bit of a strip between as well. This is a real pain to use, where you actually have a strip of polys going in here, and then in order to make sure that this piece here, like the little arms and such, goes here, that this is these have the same ones, then you take a strip of polygons here, you project from this model onto this one, and then you have a strip with all the details, and then you project from this model onto this one, and then you just project to the other model again. Very painful. Doable, but if you can avoid it, you avoid it. If you can avoid it, use do the high frequency in Mari/Painter. Free open source software is really growing, really getting bigger. I mean, Yes, in Blender it is. In terms of the rest of the industry, it's not really. Like, you don't really have an open source alternative to Photoshop, not a real one. You don't have something for Nuke. Yes, you have Natron. It's not very good. You just don't really have a lot of that. Personally, I like closed source software. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but the reason I prefer that is because it's usually better designed. A lot of, like, Blender is actually a well-designed software, but a lot of open source software feels extremely open sourcey, where you can tell there isn't like a chief UX designer. So there's just, I find that in general, open source software is worse than, like worse to use, at least in terms of interface, than closed source software. But I know a lot of people use open source, like almost from an ideological point of view. Totally fine. If you prefer to just stick to open source, that's great. I don't. I use Blender a fair bit today, and like it's basically my main software, and it's great. It's great software. But I'm not using it because of open source. I don't really care if it's open source or not. I'm using it because it's a good software. I didn't use it when it wasn't good, right? In 2.8 it improved drastically. In large way, that was UX. That the UX became a lot more manageable, and then I started using it more because software got better. There were some people who were talking about how, like, Morton, I finally saw the light when we started using Blender more. No, we didn't. Blender got better. if there is another alternative, like if Lightwave, for instance, you were to pull an absolute rabbit out of their hat and turn the ship around and it become absolutely incredible, well, I'm gonna be using a lightwave, right? Like, granted that it's affordable and all that. For me, it's I just like doing 3D. The tool really doesn't matter to me, as long as, you know, the tool. As long as I like using the tool, rather, like, it needs to feel good to use. It needs to not be cumbersome. But for me, I just like doing 3D. Tool is very secondary to me. Like, in my days, like, all the software I used has been like, started off with like Bryce. Then I'm using Modo, Max, Maya, Softimage, Blender, and that's just for main 3D software. Then Body Paint, Mudbox, Substance Painter, Photoshop, like just all sorts of stuff for texturing and modeling and everything, right? Nuke, Fusion, Natron, like they're just tools. The main tool you're using now may not be the main tool you're using in the future. Like 10 years ago, everyone was switching to Modo. Almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago, they were acquired by the Foundry. But 12 years ago, a bit more than that, then Modo was really hot. Like, Maya felt a bit stagnant, and Modo was really like a fresher breath, like a breath of fresh air. And then it stopped being that. Like, I was properly into Modo. Like, it was a fantastic software. And then it stopped being such a good software. Basically, Maya started really getting a lot better, and then it was just a lot easier just to stick to Maya. Like, not just better, it got objectively better at a lot of different ways. Like, Arnold was kicking the ass off the native render engine in Modo as well. It was just easier to use, the result looked better, the skin shading was much better. So 3D is just kind of 3D. Don't fall in love with a tool. It's really fun to sculpt without symmetry. You should try it sometimes if you haven't already. It's just a fun little thing to play around with. Like, this entire thing has been made without symmetry now, which means you can see a lot of weird stuff in the face. Just gonna go over this with a little bit of damp standard now. Damp standard is just such a good one. Yeah, somebody's talking here about like Photoshop. I like Photoshop. Photoshop is fine. Like, I'm not in the bandwagon of in the group of people who's going like Photoshop is terrible. Photoshop for me does exactly what it need to do. For me, it's like the Swiss Army knife. The alternative I've been using a little bit has been Nuke. Obviously, Nuke is stupidly expensive, but even like Affinity has a lot of cool stuff, but it's missing a lot of features as well. Like, I really like all the content aware fills. I use them a lot. If I didn't have them, I tried something similar in in Affinity. It's just not as good. Like painting in Photoshop is pretty good as well. Photoshop is just an overall decent package. The issue people have with Photoshop is, in a large way, the licensing models with Adobe. But it's not like Photoshop is like a bad software. Right? Like it can be confusing. The UX can be a little bit all over the place, and they keep changing things around. But the tool itself is, I mean, it's a pretty good tool. Like there really isn't like an obvious competitor to Photoshop. Like in terms of like, there isn't like a 3D Studio Max to Maya in terms of Photoshop. .3D also gets very iterative, or sculpting gets very iterative at some point, where you just have to go in and just work over the same areas multiple times. There isn't like an event where your character just gets good. It's usually just sitting down and just working over one specific area multiple times over and over and over again. Not because you're redoing it over and over again, you're just adding to it, right? One thing that's actually been really interesting though about Substance Painter, that they when they were acquired by Adobe, there was a lot of gloom and doom about that. But I mean, in terms of licensing, that did change. They removed a perpetual, apart from what Victor was saying in a chat about like you can still get it through Steam, but the licensing was exceptional when it was just algorithmic. Now it's just standard Adobe, but the tool itself is cutting edge. Like they're really pushing a lot of things here. The 3D texturing was very stagnant for the longest time. Like you really only have two main software, and before Painter you only had one main software, and it was Mari. And now Painter is a very, very real alternative to Mari in a lot of different ways. I know a lot of texture artists who paint exclusively using Painter. It introduced a lot of new things like smart masks, smart materials, the whole like fill layer approach, generators. It was just a very innovative piece of tech. And since the Adobe acquisition, they've added a bunch of new stuff like warp project, for instance. And finally, you can now rotate around the locked environment to your camera. So Painter is one of these that it's really, really good. But it's I'm always surprised by both how feature rich it is and what insanely basic tools it's lacking. So that's always been my Painter experience. How do you feel about Keyshot when it comes to rendering? I don't really use Keyshot. It looks fine, but I just chuck my stuff into Blender. Like obviously not as iterative, but I just decimate my models, throw them into Blender, render it there. I have a lot more control than Keyshot, and also not really a big fan of all the additional costs. That was something that's been changing a lot over the last 10-15 years in 3D. Back like when I started with 3D, it was just genuinely difficult to get a good render, like to get any good render. First, it was also like the render engines were kind of crap back then, like Mentoray and such. It was just heavy stuff. Computers were much slower. You didn't really have like proper or global illumination, like indirect lighting. But it was just harder. It was just less tutorials as well. So it took me a long time to just get like a semi-nice kind of realistic looking render, even of just like a teapot. Also back then you didn't really have like a linear workflow, so everything looked really overblown. There was no PBR, so everything was just all over the place when it came to values and such. Just gonna play around with this. I really like playing around with just the with general proportions. Henning, what's your opinion on using Unreal as a render engine? Haven't really used it. Looks great. I generally don't know what it's like to use it as a render engine. Often these kind of tools are great for like big productions, but they're a bit difficult to use for like if you just want to chuck something in there. But yeah, no opinion there really. Like I don't have a qualified opinion on Unreal in any way. That's something I'm very clear about. That's something I really want to be clear about with like all the flip Nolan videos and tutorials. So hopefully it adds a bit more legitimacy to it. That if there's something I don't really know about, I'm not really going to comment too much on it. Which means hopefully that, you know, if I'm commenting on something, that means I actually have a somehow informed opinion on that. Hopefully. Something that we talked about in one of the other streams about the whole, if somebody hasn't worked in games or in films or something, then their opinion isn't really worth a whole lot in that field they don't really have experience with. It's just very, very different advice you're getting if somebody has actually has like domain expertise in the field you're having questions about. Here's an age-old question. When do you know if it's done? It's done when I give up, when I stop working on it. It's a good question. In a production, you know when it's done because it's approved. For your own work, for like just a doodle like this, it's done when I give up, when I don't enjoy it anymore. For a personal work, it's done when you basically have someone external telling you, giving you feedback, and they're like, okay, you know, finish it now. Because it's really, really, really difficult. I highly recommend getting external feedback on your work if at all possible. Just because it's legit really hard to know the like to have an objective view of your own work. It's what we were talking about, right? That your brain gets used to stuff so fast when it comes to art. That's why I'm taking breaks, right? Just having a look at this and taking breaks, because man, your brain gets used to stuff way too fast. And if you were to use that knowledge over a whole project, you're in trouble if you don't get feedback. Then we are going to, well, you're not going to do anything. I'm going to move this over here, and then I'm going to add some eyes to this guy. I'm starting to kind of like him. I find it to be very useful to use some kind of style reference like this. Just something to guide me in the right direction. Trying to be a little bit more whimsical when it comes to this. And here we will definitely have to modify this. I'm probably just going to move this around a little bit so it at least approximately fits in the same cavity. And then I'm going to do the same thing here as well. Just being a bit whimsical, playing around with this. Let's see how this works. Okay, I don't like the one eye is higher up than the other one, so I'm just going to reduce it, move it down a little bit. Is there somebody typing next to you, or are you legit this fast with shortcuts? Yep, my girlfriend is sitting next to me. She's doing real work in VFX, working from home. So if you're hearing somebody type, that's just my lovely girlfriend who's working. Just gonna try to make him a little bit thinner. Just playing with proportions. Now what you can see, for instance, if you start to break this down, like he looks a bit stylized now, but if you start to actually look at him, eyes are still in the middle, the nose is still in the middle, and this is still in the middle of this, and this is still here. So this is still quite a realistic portrait in many ways. Like it's adhering to essentially like pretty naturalistic looking proportions. So that's something you can break up. You can, for instance, make the lips go way higher up, or you can make them go further down as well. So you can just play around with these kind of proportions. So you can, for instance, take the head and move this, like the top of the head, move this down. I have no idea if this is going to work or not. Where did you find this guy from? I went on Pinterest and I searched for old mugshot and then I found this guy. So I just did like this is a very quick bit of research, right? I just went on Pinterest like a few minutes before I started streaming and be like, yep, that's the guy. And then I just started with that, keeping it simple. How do you feel about the Maya render engine compared to Blender? That would be a Cycles versus Arnold question. Cycles is a bit easier to use, I find, not really because of the engine itself, because of how it's implemented. Like any viewport can be a render engine, which is insanely useful. I also find it to be, I haven't used Arnold in a few years actually, so the GPU rendering was kind of crappy. When I used it last, it was very buggy. This might have been improved and fixed right now. Based on that, the Cycles was much better. But in terms of like the overall engine, like Cycles is not a tested engine in terms of a big production compared to Arnold. Arnold is literally made for big productions. It's just a workhorse like nothing else. It's designed to just eat through all your data. It's feature rich. It has every single node under the sun. You can do anything with Arnold. While Cycles is like, I haven't properly stress tested Cycles, but there are so many things I just have a hard time doing with it that you need some kind of custom setup for. For instance, you're doing some kind of glass material, or you're just adding like a this is something you do a lot. You're adding like some kind of like a wet line here. You're adding some tears to it, and these are just darker. And then you have to go in and do some hack. Like you have to do some kind of like sample info node or whatever they're called. And there are just more unexpected things there. Like for instance, oh, you can't do light linking. Yes, light linking is coming right now. But is it going to be good? Is it going to be tested? Light linking in Arnold is tested beyond anything. So Arnold is just a much more refined render engine than in terms of like in terms of reliability than Cycles. But pros and cons, right? If you don't need that, then you don't need that. A lot of people wouldn't need that level of complexity. So yeah, different things, different tools for different kind of jobs. To put it like this, though, if I was working in a professional setting and I had to build a pipeline, I would never in my life build a pipeline around Cycles if I had Arnold next to me. I mean, Arnold is used for like the most high-end of the high-end movies, right? Like it's used in large VFX and commercial studios. Well, nobody would be using Cycles for that. At least not a lot of people would. Wondering what happened here. I might have done like some accidental symmetry issues where probably did that, where it just turned a little bit weird. Okay, I need more subdivisions or more resolution. I don't think I'm going to change it too much now, so then I'm just going to be Control D. Now we have subdivisions, and then I can just go over this and just refine this. This allows me to just add a lot more details to the model. I like that it's pretty rough as well. That was almost my intention, but now it allows me to make it a bit rougher, I suppose, because it allows me to have another frequency of just fun little brush strokes. I mean, like Cycles is a fantastic engine. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's really really fun to play around with it as well. It's one of the reasons I really like Blender. Like, yeah, it's a good engine. I find this could be a placebo, but I'm pretty sure it's not, that you have in Cycles for the standard material you have there, the AI standard material, that you have the standard surface, I think it's called. You have random walk v2 for SSS, which I find to be better than what you have in Blender. I always have a bit of a hard time with SSS in Blender, while in Arnold that's a bit more plug and play. Just giving this guy some eyebrows. And again, just a quick reminder that I haven't done this in a while now. I need to be more American in my pitches. That we have a very nice summer sale when it comes to all our products. So all Flipnoma's products are, all Flipnoma's exclusives are 40% off. So we have like this incredible course here by Morton, which is 40% off now. This is creating a full character in ZBrush, creating this whole guy from scratch. Link coming in the chat. Then we have creating like a realistic character portrait masterclass, which is just creating this guy here from scratch as well. This is essentially a full industry character. If you were to, like, these would be the steps you would do to create this in a full production for VFX or a game or something, like you, not fully like baked and such, but for games. But you know, we're going through the retopology, all the sculpting stages, all the UV mapping stages, all the final detailing, this kind of stuff. And then taking him into Painter, painting all the maps here from scratch, taking him into Blender, talking about like AGX versus Filmic a little bit, and then just rendering the whole guy out. So I definitely recommend that you check out the just Flipnoma's for a lot of awesome content. We have almost 30,000 products now, so we have grown to quite a size in terms of that. So we have just a lot of awesome stuff. I realized yesterday how dependent I actually was on Flipnoma's as well, because we had a bit of downtime. We were down for maintenance yesterday where we were upgrading the site, and I need our reference pack. And I'm so used to just going to Graphit for reference packs, and now I couldn't, so I was just fiddling my thumbs for a little bit. So we have a lot of fantastic products. I really like it when I have more resolution to play with now, because now I have like 3.4 mil, and I can just go in and really add a lot more resolution. Victor's asking, is it unprofessional to list the courses you've completed in the CV if it's not an official degree? I'm not even sure if it's unprofessional. I just don't really think it will do a lot. I find that people are optimizing the wrong things when it comes to applying for jobs. I find a lot of people are focusing way too much on cover letters and CV and such, and instead of just on the portfolio. Like, I don't think it's going to make a dent either way if you were to list that you've taken the character portrait masterclass or not. They're just going to be like, oh cool, what about your portfolio, right? So yeah, that's basically my thoughts on that. Focus more on your portfolio than on the specifics of the CV. I find for CV as well, I generally would just cut away anything before university. I see people having like primary school or that kind of stuff, or when I was 15 I used to be into volleyball. Like it's just not really relevant. Keep it simple. Recruiters have a lot of stuff to keep in mind. You're never going to be asked these kind of things. Might be relevant, like certain things might be relevant if you have a lot of volunteering or something, or you've been doing something that like it's not just like a sport or something, but like you have some actual relevant experience, then add that, but just keep it simple. I saw there was it's like some weeks ago now, there was somebody on Twitter who posted their cover letter about like how can I improve this, and people had all sorts of feedback on a cover letter, and like yeah, the feedback was good and all, but it's not what's going to make it or break it. When it comes to cover letter or CV and such, particularly like a cover letter, it's more about, like, it is like where you can actually talk to the company, or like at least, you know, they get to know you a little bit, but it's more about just not being a dick about it. Like, just don't write the wrong company's name and such on it. But it's so not important compared to a portfolio. As long as your cover letter is fine, then you're fine. And by that I just mean you're talking about what you know, what software you know, keeping it simple. Yeah, here's a good question. This is hey Henning, in one of your recent videos in Blender, you plugged your base color straight into SSS. You didn't use the base color input at all. Would you do the same in Arnold? Yep, I developed that in that workflow in Arnold. We actually have a whole course focusing on that as well, which is, let me find this one for you. If I just go here. So we made a whole course last year, time flies. I don't really know when it was from. it's about texturing a whole character, this one here. Texturing a whole character in Painter, and then doing the look dev in Arnold. So the exact same workflow is basically being done here as it's being done in this one here. Like the shader setup is as identical as you can. The reason I'm plugging the albedo straight into the SSS color is because, and just leaving the SSS value to like 1, is because that means you're controlling everything with SSS. If you were to mix it into the base color, now you're basically like reducing the SSS amount. But you know, whatever works. There isn't like a standard way of doing skin. It really is just down to whatever works. I just find that to be a really useful way of doing it. If you want to know what he's talking about, there is a video on our channel, just on YouTube, where we're talking about how to do realistic skin texturing in, I suppose that is in Blender, but it's just like a fundamental skill set where you can use that really for anything. Do you have tutorials on makeup? Nope. I wish we did. That's something that's hard for Morten and I to do, because we're obviously not familiar with too much makeup. So it's one of those, we would have to learn how to do makeup beforehand. Probably the best bet would be to go on YouTube and watch some of the beauty YouTubers talking about that, and then trying to translate that into CG. I don't really know of any tutorials that focuses on makeup, which is obviously a shame, because that's something that we really need to learn, because makeup is obviously a very important part of texturing, right? Like, not just for like if you're sculpting or if you're texturing a woman compared to a man, it would be almost like, it's just a way of texturing them. It's just a part of the texturing tool set, where you want the eyes to be a little bit darker, and then you can do that in a more natural way. It's how, like, you have every single actor on TV is going to have makeup on regardless of what, just to make their skin blend a little bit better, reduce the specular, you know, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, what Victor is saying here is, if I recall correctly, you did make an SSS map for the advanced character portrait masterclass. Yeah, that's what I prefer to do when it comes to that. Just watch the video on YouTube, but the gist of it is, use as few maps as possible, and then add maps when you need control over it. If you don't need to control something, like for instance, if you were to just have a roughness value of 0.4 on the character, and you're just like, well, this is perfect. Well, then it's perfect, right? Then there's no reason to modulate the roughness using a roughness map. But if it's not perfect, if you set it to 0.4 and you're like, I want the lips to be a little bit smoother, I want them to be 0.2, well, now you make a map for that. You can make a mask for it, for instance, and you can control that directly in Arnold or in Blender, where you just make a mask and you just take it in and out. That's often how you would do it in production. You wouldn't necessarily make a full roughness map and then adjusting it there. You might oftentimes you just make masks for the roughness maps, the SSS maps, and you can use those for the similar ones. You might have like an NPC would call them like ISOs, isolation maps. So you would have an ISO or mask just for like this area here, and you would just export them out. It wouldn't be for subsurface or anything, it would just be a mask for it. Because this means, if you have a mask for this, and you have a mask for the tip of the nose, and you have a mask for the eye, that means you can just export this out, and in like your look dev software of choice, whatever that is. You can just make it like a layered material, or you can just put them into nodes, and you could just dial them in and out. So you can use this for instance, for like specular. You can use this if you need to have like modulate the SSS and such. You can really do that. The advantage of doing that in LookDev, like in the shading part, is that you can very easily adjust it, so you don't have to re-export something. And also, it's kind of like what you're seeing is what you're getting. If you do this in Painter, you're kind of working blind because you don't really know what you're seeing. So by doing this, exporting all this stuff out, it becomes much easier. What's the fundamental skills you need to be a professional? It depends entirely what kind of profession you want, to be honest. If you're a texture artist versus a groom artist versus a roto artist or a sculptor, very different skill sets you require for that. For sculpting, you just need to, well, this is gonna sound a bit dumb, but you need to just be good at sculpting. Like if you want to be a character artist, you need to just be good at sculpting. You just need to be good at figure sculpting. You don't need to. There are a lot of people who do character art professionally, but who are not amazing sculptors. But let me put it like this: it helps you a lot. So if you're an incredible sculptor, it's just much easier to get hired. Hey, how do I get the face muscles reference, which is in the top right corner? That is very simple. This is from, I think I have it open still, maybe. Here it is. This is the Flip Normal's anatomy bust. This is a commercial product though. This is 40% off right now. I'm gonna send this in the chat, which should appear before I've even said this. Magic. So this is just a model I made about a year ago or so, and then you just drag it in, and then you go to preferences, cam view, and then make cam view. It's pretty cool because now you can go between these ones as well. You have different ones. I have a skeleton here as well, which is pretty handy. So I just did the same with a skeleton. So now you have this, and you can just see the different skeletons. You can do this with anything, with any model. And then I just have the size here. This isn't a 3D model. This isn't a live model. You can see here, right? If it's black, it just becomes transparent, and there's no transparency on it. But what it is, it's just a picture. Do character artists also texture their models, or are those two separate jobs? Yeah, different companies operate in different ways. Some studios allow you to do that. Some studios are very separate for modeling and texturing. I remember when I was at Framestore, I was just an intern there many years ago. I think it's still the same way, that texturing modeling is two entirely separate things. At NPC, I was doing both modeling, sculpting, and texturing as well. So, but this can also change as well, depending who's department head, what pipeline they're running, all that. So this isn't like 100% clear. Sometimes it's also just down to what you can do. If you can do both, it often makes sense to have you do both as well, because then you don't have to like write an email to get another mask or something. Like you just model it, then you texture it, and you just go a lot of back and forth there. But yeah, this just depends entirely on the company. Pros and cons to both. If you have somebody who only textures, it means they're going to be damn good at texturing. But the disadvantage is that if you are a hammer, everything looks like a nail, which means that if you are a texture artist, every single issue looks like a texturing issue. Where if you are a modeling and texturing artist or look dev artist, a groomer, you are going to be seeing the problems in a more holistic way, where maybe it is not a texturing issue, maybe it's a mid-frequency issue. It's a good idea as well, once in a while, just to do a bit of a render like this, just to see it in, just in a more rendered state. I usually go to render, then I set the shadow, and I just change the angle a little higher, maybe like 20, and just stick to that. This is a little bit softer. Just want to play around a little bit with proportions. I find that often I get a bit too conservative with proportions, and it's a good idea to just go in and play around with this. What's the longest you ever spent in one specific piece sculpting? Months. I really can't remember specifically which one it has, because it's been a fair few things. There was a movie called A Monster Calls, came out like 2016 I think, where I sculpted on the monster from A Monster Calls, and that was like 6 months or something of just sculpting. We had the same for like Pacific Rim as well. I was on that for like about a year as well, so there's a lot of sculpting, a lot of texturing. It just depends on the show as well. Spent a lot of time sculpting. Just going through and adding some volumes to lips as well. One of the best skills I've developed over the last few years, I know both Morten and I've worked a lot on that, is sculpting and talking at the same time. This used to be something I couldn't really do. It's tricky. It's really tricky to do it, but it also allowed us to unlock new rewards. Like it becomes much faster to make a tutorial, and also it's because you only have to do it once, but also because the tutorials also get a lot better as well, which is obviously a big plus. It means that you can be specific. Instead of just sculpting and commenting, you can be like, right now I'm doing this specific thing, and you can explain things. You can pause things and you can explain things. So going from having needed to do time lapses or voiceovers rather to sculpting real time, very, very useful skills. When does the sale end? I believe that's on the 10th of July. What sort of stuff did you work on Pacific Rim? Let's see if I can actually find that. Let's see. It was for Pacific Rim 2. Let's see here. Yeah, this was one of the last movies I worked on, so this is for Pacific Rim 2. So Morten worked on this guy here, Raijin, and I worked on this guy here, the Mega Kaiju. So it was really fun. So I was sculpting this guy, like concept sculpting up, and then texturing him as well. And somebody else really apologized to him. We had a ridiculously small team for this in terms of the character crew. So everyone got to do a lot of stuff. Like for this Morten, this is a toy I think, but for this Morten did basically the whole thing. We also had some more guys. We had Shrikethorn. I was concept sculpting on a lot of these guys as well. So yeah, good fun. Good fun. What artistic qualities do you admire in other artists? One of them is attention to detail. That's a really difficult one to get properly good at. I've only met really a few people who are absolutely excellent at attention to detail. I'm not amazing at attention to detail. I'm more like, I'm focusing more on like the bigger picture, and sometimes that burns me a little bit. It's not like bad at details, but just like the attention to detail it's just really hard. It's just a legit hard skill. Some people just gravitate more towards that. Kind of want to make a YouTube video on that as well. Just what on earth does attention to detail mean? That's something I've been thinking a lot about. Are you more geared towards film or games? I worked in movies. I never worked in games. Now I'm out of the industry. Well, not out. I'm doing flip normals, right? Very much relating to the industry, but I'm not doing productions anymore. I'm out of production is what I'm trying to say. I'm late to the party. In character for animation, do you prefer to keep clothing as a separate mesh or delete the interfaces and combine to the character? Yeah, probably want to keep that as a separate mesh. That's just the safest one. Depends, of course, on the pipeline for that. Talk to the rigger. For games, that's probably a bit different because then you have more performance requirements. But for film, then you probably want to keep the whole thing. If you're doing any kind of simming, then that's essential. Then you need to keep the mesh underneath, because otherwise the sim is just not going to work. If you're not simulating anything, doesn't necessarily matter a whole lot, but it would be an awkward one. For instance, if you're looking at the angle like a carrot like this, and you're just seeing that there's a big gap here because this isn't filled in. So I don't really see a whole lot of downsides to keeping them as like the way it is in real world, right? Where you have separate meshes for separate things. The only thing would be like you would make collisions a little bit easier to deal with. Like if you have intersections and such, there would be less intersections. But yeah, for this kind of stuff, this just depends entirely on how the pipeline is constructed. There's so many things in 3D like that is not really about like what's the best way of doing it. Same in topology. What's the best topology? Well, the best topology is the topology that it gets a job done. Well, what gets a job done? Well, that depends entirely on what systems you're using for it. If you're using muscle systems, or if you're blend shaping stuff, or if you're just not using any of that, depends entirely on that. The more I learn about anything, any kind of specific topic, the more my answer is, well, that depends. That's, if anyone is saying something with a high level of certainty, then I always get a bit suspicious. If anyone were to be like, what's the best kind of topology, and they have a very clear answer for that, then I would not trust their answer for that. How many polygons for the retopper one did you put on the creature for Pacific Rim? Actually, I didn't retopper that, so I don't actually know. But it also just depends, because this is also what, again, depends, because you for production you don't just have like one mesh, you have like different meshes, you have different levels. So you're gonna have one that's like the main retopologized mesh, and then you're gonna simplify that into probably an animation rigging mesh. Then you're gonna be probably subdividing that, or there's exporting level 2 or something from ZBrush, level 3 from ZBrush. That's going to be a render mesh. So it really like depends on like which mesh you're talking about. Stuff gets a little bit hard to when you're dealing with that, because it needs to work in rigging, it needs to work in animation, it needs to work in shot. So if you were to take the render mesh, give it to an animator, they would actually die on the spot. And if you were to take the animesh and render that, it would not look fantastic. So yeah, it just depends. Hey Ernest, glad you couldn't make it. I'm going to be going for about 20 more minutes, then we are at about 2 hours. Yes, if you guys have any more questions, I'm more than happy to answer. I'm just going over now and just basically just adding complexity in this guy. Yeah, I'm also hoping to do a stream before the end of the sale. I'm going on vacation next week, so I won't be able to do streaming until the 10th when the sale ends. But hopefully I can do a stream where I can sculpt over somebody's work as well. So if somebody wants their work sculpted over, just send me an email at henning@flipnormals.com, and hopefully I can get I can do that. I'm probably just going to be doing 1 or 2 sculpts. So that's very similar to what I'm doing with a mentorship. I know there are some people in the chat here from the mentorship, and they know exactly what it's like, where I just take your work and I just sculpt over it with commentary and just talking about how you can improve it, either specific things for the sculpt or more like deeper fundamental things that where you don't really care specifically about the sculpt, but you care more about the like the underlying fundamental thing that you can use really for anything in the future. Just playing around with his facial expression a little bit as well. Do you think Seer Mesher does a good enough job with the polygon for games? Seer Mesher is not great for final topology. Again, I haven't worked in games. going to make an assumption here, but I know in games that you need to really optimize your meshes. There's no way in hell that Sear Mesher is going to be able to do that. I mean, for film, it's not even good enough. It's good enough for certain things here and there, but the moment you need to do proper animation, or like you need to rig something, this becomes really tricky. So it's really difficult to create good topology using Sear Mesher. What I always find is that when you look at the Sear Mesh topology, you're like, holy shit, this is like the best thing ever. This looks really, really good. And then you start to work with it. You try to make some seams or something for UVs, or you're trying to just do some changes to it, and you're like, oh man, I gotta delete a lot of stuff for this to work. And then I end up deleting half the model and rebuilding the rest, and then I have to connect things up, and a retop doesn't take that long to do if you're doing a face, right? So I just prefer to do this by hand unless I really have to do this, unless I really just need a quick topology right now. Thanks a lot, Victor. I really appreciate that. It was really awesome to having you as a student as well. It's really cool to see how much you improved. Good luck to you on your sculpting, and have fun with whatever you're sculpting today. And I'm sure I'll see you on our little Discord server. What I prefer to do as well when we're working characters like this is I tend to work more on the face, and I leave the rest just kind of rough. And that's almost like using depth of field, where the sharper parts is going to be the center part, and the rest is going to just be rough and almost a bit like blurry. It can give you a pretty interesting result there. It's all about controlling contrast, like we talked about before, where if you're doing it this way, you can really control where people are looking. If you have an area that's sharp, people can look there. Or if you have an area that's blurry and then you have a sharp area, people are probably going to look at the sharp areas. Is there any way I could find the anatomy double on top right? Yep, that would be this guy. Let me find this guy. Just have some pictures from Pacific Rim here. That was this guy here, the anatomy bust. This is a very useful bust I made. I mean, I use this all the time. I mean, I know there are people here who, like I just mentioned, right, who's been taking the mentorship. Anyone who's taking the mentorship has just been seeing this bust, either seeing the evolution of the bust or just like seeing the bust directly, because I use this all the time when teaching. Like I really needed something like this, and I didn't really like any of these existing busts. I am going to be doing a version 2 of it as well at some point. That's going to have colors and going to be split in two. So one side is going to be more the underlying things, and the other one is going to be more the surface things. So that's going to be a nice little upgrade, which is going to happen at some point, not in the near future. Yeah, what Ernest is saying here, that too many busts focus on too many anatomy busts focuses on the muscle, but the fat and bone are the most important for the face. I find that to be so true, where so many anatomy models really just focuses on the muscles, and the muscles are just not that important for the face. They're more important if you're doing like facial expressions, of course, but if you're sculpting a character like this, it's all bone and fat basically. It's also just such a mess because it's such a mix of all sorts of stuff. But if you don't understand the fat of the face, it becomes very hard to create like aged characters and such, and it just becomes hard to deal with that. And if you don't understand the bones, then you're in all sorts of trouble. At least the bone is more obvious, because then you just look at a skull, while a character like the fat is less obvious. It's less obvious that the fat actually has a substantial role in creating the final look. Any tutorials in the sale that implement Maya in the workflow? Yes, sir. We have this one here, character face texturing. This one here, we're using Maya. So ZBrush, Painter, and Maya. This is all rendered in Maya. So the final thing here is in Maya. I want to do more Maya tutorials as well. I really enjoy Maya, actually. It's one of the few people in the world who seems to enjoy working in Maya. Just going over the whole thing and just kind of adding just some texture to it. It's almost like I'm like cross-hatching now on a drawing. Just trying to make this a little bit more interesting. You can also go through with BCT and just go through this, and that was definitely the wrong brush. I want to have the clay tubes. I'm just going over this a little bit as well. I also have some pretty cool ones as well that I bought. These are some nice clay brushes, and then we have a fingerprint brush. These are not available on flip normals. So we have like it's a really cool one. You can just add fingerprints all around. Just adding a bit more variety to it. Let me just do this. It's pretty cool. Just adds a bit like more high frequency stuff to it. It just makes it look like it's almost like it's real. And then of course you have to go over and sculpt this because fingerprints are not forever. So, but even with this, you can still control the contrast. Do you have a Maya crash course somewhere? Oh boy, do I have a Maya crash course somewhere. We have Intro to Maya. Let's see here if this works. So here we actually have two Maya courses. We have one, which is, let's get this gnarly dude away. We have two. This is Introduction to Modeling in Maya. And this focuses, well, on, you guessed it. Oops, that's the wrong link. This focuses on modeling in Maya. This is a really solid course for just learning modeling. We cover a lot of the tools, of course, but also just modeling concepts. So even if you're not interested in Maya, this is still a good course. And then we have Intro to Maya as well. Intro to Maya just focuses on the whole thing. Yeah, speaking of like Maya crash course, I want to make a YouTube video on how to make Maya crash less because it can be a little crashy. But if in most cases though, if it's crashy, it's kind of your fault. if you don't know what you're doing, then Maya gets a little bit due to the architecture of Maya can get a bit crashy. What's happening is essentially that you have like everything is a node. So if you're doing really anything is a node, which is not the case in other softwares. If you're doing, for instance, like a bevel. If you do a bevel in Blender, this is just a bevel. It's a destructive blender. If you do a bevel in Modo or Max or something, it's just a bevel. But if you're doing a bevel in Maya, it's a node attached to it. So which means you do 10 bevels, 10 nodes. You do 10 bevels, 10 extrusions, all that kind of stuff. You're just creating tons and tons of nodes, which means that you get a node network that's insane. And you start to deform some stuff, and you start to reference things, and the node network just goes insane. So this is where, if you understand that, and the fix in practical terms is to delete history, but if you understand what's going on, it kind of makes sense that stuff is starting to crash a lot, just because it gets very complicated. Like I've had a lot of students who is dealing with crashy Maya, then look at what they're doing, and it's you have like 6,000 objects with 6,000 nodes in the history. So that's what you're seeing in Maya, for instance, if you're dealing with the history, it's just nodes. Your entire Maya history and inputs. This is just input nodes going into the model. We actually have a video tutorial on that as well. Understand, like on YouTube, understanding Maya nodes. If you just look at the thumbnail just has a lot of nodes in it. So that's really useful. Alt-Shift-D is your friend, says Christian Anderson. Yep. Delete nodes or delete history. Another one that's really nice as well is you should probably map this to a key is delete non-deformer nodes. This means that if you have blend shapes or deformers, it's going to delete everything but that. Yes, if you're working with like with things like XGen or with blend shapes or specific deformers and such, then you don't want to delete history because that deletes that as well. So if you use an XGen, you definitely don't want to delete history for that, because then you would be killing your XGen nodes. It's been really fun sculpting this guy here because it's all asymmetrical. So it's just wacky asymmetry, like all the way from start. So you can just go back to the beginning of this, like on the stream. I don't even know if you can. I suppose you can go back to the stream. If not, you can just check it out on YouTube afterwards. All these streams are posted on YouTube. And so yeah, just good fun. Also, if you're interested in more streams, we have, this is the 5th stream we've been doing this week. It's been a busy week for the two of us. And I've done, this is my 3rd one. So I have one on the bones of the body. So just which bones are important to memorize if you want to be a character artist. Then I covered the muscles as well. Cover like how to like cheat the forearm, which muscles are useful in the forearm, what are the muscles that are important to keep in mind in terms of the torso and such. Just really covering that, ranting a lot about anatomical names. So that's about, I think that's about an hour or so of just me doodling around, hour and a half of just explaining this stuff. Essentially, I've been working so hard on the Intro to Anatomy course that I have so many notes in my brain, and I figured it was worth it to just unload that in a few streams. All right, I'll continue for about 10 more minutes, then we should be at about the 2-hour mark. So yeah, just hit me with your questions. Then I'll go over this with a little bit of the skin kit as well. So under standard brush, alpha, you're not going to have these unless you have the skin kit. I have some nice ones here I really enjoyed using. This is pretty cool. So we can just do some skin kit stuff. See if this works. This may not work at all. I can set this to spray. Color spray doesn't really matter. It's all just details anyway. Just to make the surface a little bit more interesting. I think I might want to give him like some burn damage as well. That'd be fun. Let me try that. I really like using the skin kit. There are so many cool ones here. I'm gonna try the rhino skin maybe. Yeah, let's try this one here. We can just like mess him up properly. We can try this with yeah, this is pretty cool. Going over it like so, or we can just go over and just use in drag rect. Yeah, just trying to like give him some nice, like really nasty damage here on one side. What do you think about the Maxon, about how Maxon prices ZBrush? I think that is really annoying because it's not just about the pricing, it's about their ecosystem. It's about the fact that ZBrush does not in any way have backwards compatibility, which means that if somebody makes a model in ZBrush 2022 or 2023, I cannot open it because I don't have 2023, which means I'm now forced to subscribe. That means that the entire industry is essentially forced to upgrade. I'm still working on 2022. That works perfectly fine for me. I don't really need any of the new features. No intentions of really upgrading anytime soon. So, but the problem is just that if you're working in any kind of production, if you have 100 artists, one of them is using 2023. If they send you a C tool, you cannot open that. So then everyone is essentially forced to upgrade, unless of course they send you OBJs and such. So yeah, it's pretty annoying. I really don't like it when software goes subscription. It's so much easier, particularly with a tool like ZBrush, where I don't really care about the updates too much. Like if you gave me like a 4-year-old version of ZBrush, I'd be fine. I'm using some stuff here and there, but in general, I don't really need a whole lot of new stuff. Like all the rendering stuff, like all the stuff you have over here, like this entire thing, I'm never going to touch that. So it's pretty annoying. Yeah, backwards compatibility would have been brilliant. I haven't done a critique video yet, so I'm hopefully I can still do that, where we're just talking about the just taking somebody's model and just feedbacking that, basically just like a one-on-one mentorship session. How are you changing your brushes that fast? Check it out. Boop, 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 boop. I have hotkeys. I have them to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then 1 is solo like this. You can see this. I also have another one as well. Check this out. Boop, 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 boop. Really handy. Spend a little bit of time customizing ZBrush, and you are getting that time back manyfold. All right, this is essentially as far as I'm going to be taking it. So it's been an absolute pleasure streaming today, and I hope you guys learned a lot from this, or if not, at least you had a lot of fun. And I'm going to be back streaming probably next week. So no promises on exactly when, but hopefully we can do more of that. This is I reckon the final result. I'm just gonna set the strength down just a little bit, just so it doesn't burn it out entirely. So yeah, final do for today. Pretty happy with how it turned out. Fun little complete asymmetrical sculpting. So actually, if you want our config, you can just search on Flip Normals for like ZBrush hotkeys. It's all there. The entire interface and hotkey setup is right there. That's just a free product. So yeah, thank you so much for popping by, and this stream will be online as well, so you can just check that out. So thank you so much for watching.